Welcome to DreamHack Masters Winter. We're going to be getting right into things here as we look to see the second map, and it will, of course, be Nuke, the map choice of Heroic, as they look to take this. And oh, damn, we are right into our pistol.
Yes, we are indeed, Tom. We are right into the thick of things. We don't like to mess around here. We like to get straight in the action, and Otto is going to do just that with his USP. Nico and Tessis with Glocks running by on ramp, taking two heads, wrapping round the side of the CTs, already up into heaven, and shutting down A simultaneously, leaving Spinks and Snappy in an awkward position, funneling through one by one. Snappy will be moving onto ramp, via ramp into trophy room, taking down Stown in the process. Tess is taking some damage. It's a dangerous game of whack-a-mole. How Spinks is still alive, I have no idea. He keeps going in. Take the hint, mate. You're not welcome.
I guess in that situation, it's sort of like, what do? Do you go down the ladder, go all the way back around, try and get in that way? Nah, you just got to hope that Tessis, probably one of the star players on this team, just happens to miss his shots. Or runs out of bullets. I guess the USP doesn't have a huge amount. Well, it's not gone amazingly well to start this one off. Of course, c0ntact on that CT side, but we have pretty much come to know and love this Heroic T side. Like, they are a dangerous team to play against on this map. As said, like, they've gone toe-to-toe with Astralis. I think they're battling it out to be one of, if not the two best teams in the world at this map in the moment. And unfortunately, c0ntact, they don't quite share that same caliber, at least here. They have invested into this round. Some deagles, which they've proven to be deadly with thus far. And Otto on his scout is no slouch. He will start things off onto Tessis.
An important pick as well. He can now funnel back towards the spawn, and they're not sure if there's a second player around lockers or maybe heaven. So although Nico wants to go and deal with the threat of Otto, also doesn't want to give his back up for free. And Otto will be wasting a lot of time. You can see he's just shimmying back and forth. This is allowing his teammates to play more passively in their angles, and he can watch for that jump into heaven. Also through hell, through locker room. So this position is actually key and integral to this round. Otto spotting the head, can't quite connect the dot, but again, he is wasting so much time. This position is worth its weight in gold. They drop down into vents though through Spinks. Rigon, 1v1, actually taking down one and forcing more players away, allowing Spinks to open himself up, but Stown through the wall takes him out of the equation, saving Cadian in the process and keeping the dream of this round alive.
That's a pretty tasty pre-fire. Otto rotates in though and hits the tag. It allows his teammate to get out, and Esperanto looking to try and close the distance a little bit here. They're hearing the scout shots fly through, but they haven't spotted the second player. In fact, they'll have no idea that Esperanto's this close, and he closes the round out. It's going to be a break back almost instantly for c0ntact as they get themselves a multi-frag on deagles. And more importantly, they've saved a few AKs along the way.
Well, that is a massive turn of events. 2 AKs picked up. Heroic into a position where, do they want to go for a force? I mean, they must know the economy's not exactly ideal, but not too shabby either for the CTs. They have around the mid $2,000 mark, so they could just hold fire and, you know, wait for that next round, but they decide to apply the pressure right here, right now. 2 AKs picked up, deagles alongside it. There is an XM in play, which you love to see from Spinks, perched at the top of one of the best positions in the entire game to use it, but an even trade outside. It's the AKs ripping through the CTs, but now Otto uses one against the oncoming Ts, shutting down any kind of a main mid push. But he wasn't able to deal with the threat of Borup, who has control over the bomb.
Borup mentioned after the match that they played recently when they were eliminated from Blast that he wasn't happy with his performance, so I can expect to see this man a bit of vengeance in his eyes. But Down has spotted man at the back of the garage, trying to make sure he clears all the angles, but even knowing that there's a player here, it's not necessarily an easy angle to clear, and it's going to take him a long time to walk over, and that could be enough. Snappy's going to get the timing spot on, just enough to stop his teammate getting caught. Spinks also in a fairly good position here. Barup's going to start running, and this XM is going to get the easiest kill of his life. Now, unfortunately, Cadian, with the whole squad being disjointed, they've been picked off piece by piece. Well, he's the center left to try and survive.
Not too far off. You can see the disappointment from his perspective. Felt like that was an achievable kill. They will not attain their second round, and that force will fall on deaf ears, allowing c0ntact to now build up their economy, keep 2 AKs in play, and Heroic surely will be tapping out. Maybe a P250 here or there, but just nothing significant. In actual fact, they do not invest a single cent into the round. So, Tom, I would be amazed if Heroic could get more than 1 kill in this.
I think I'd be disappointed in c0ntact if they do. And that's been one of the problems. We've already mentioned there's been a few holes in this team. Like, they very easily could have taken that first map, especially with the momentum that they had and a few sort of critical errors. I felt like let Heroic almost back in, and, well, once they got rolling, they were almost impossible to stop. It definitely hasn't been a dominating game, though. It's been a lot more enjoyable than I necessarily expected it to be, and as someone who's been a fan of this c0ntact team for a while, it's nice to see that they are still competing with some of the better rosters. The thing that worries me, though, is you look at c0ntact as more of an organization, Vince. Like, you look at them in the likes of Overwatch or even buying into the COD League. They've invested a lot of money. They spent a lot to buy this initial core. The results, I don't think they've been enough. I think they need to come out of Masters with something at least, even if it's just a playoff spot.
I completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a team that's ranked 55 in the world. And sure, they're not exactly the most veteran lineup. They've not been together for a long time. Double run boost, by the way, really cool to see. Does allow them to at least get down to secret, but Esperanto, ooh, that's some snappy aim. She gets an eco. So I'm not going to get too carried away, but that was very impressive. c0ntact do not concede a single player. But yeah, I mean, they are ranked 55, and I feel like even though they're a team that's not too storied and has got a couple of players that, unless you follow CS a lot, you may not have heard of before or not really know a great deal, at some point they need to start delivering on this promise. At some point they've got to start getting results. And, you know, to try and look at the positive side of that last map, because you're your own worst enemy, you also know that if you were to shore up those mistakes and make sure they don't happen again, you have a pretty good chance of winning, right? Like, it's easier to say, right, I know the devil of myself and I know what I did wrong, as opposed to we got completely outplayed in the last map. 3v3 falls upon us and outside control is being attained by Heroic again.
Gonna slow the round down. Always a good thing to do in a 3v3 situation, especially when you're on the T side. Gonna slowly try and clear some of these angles, and with the majority of the players at the moment on that upper bomb site, not really much of a chance for c0ntact to really do anything here. They've got to start pushing and probing, and Barup is actually waiting to try and cut them off. It's a battle between him and Otto, and he's going to win it. Now the remaining players still spotting players outside. They're not really going to budge, and this allows for the bomb to move. But interestingly, the bomb's on Barup.
Yeah, he's taken it a couple times now outside. Had it a few rounds ago as well when they had a chance at maybe winning and he got shut down by Spinx's XM. Heroic have been very slow in the bulk of these T rounds, as opposed to the pistol. They already have control room established under thumb. Rigon waiting. Oh, they line up and it's 2 headshots. It was looking good for Heroic. It was looking like they'd finally battle back, but Rigon will deny this round more than likely unless Nico can clutch with 5 seconds. He sticks to sight. Snappy's not sure about this, and now he's given up his position, and Nico comes good with the AK. 2 headshots to add to his original. He lands a 3K, and Heroic get their second.
It's give and take. Like, I feel like the first shots that came out here from Rigon was superb, and then the repeat was silly. Like, he almost won them the round and then almost lost them it as well. Like, if he just stays, there's 10 seconds left. There's absolutely nowhere that Nico can plant because of the position of Snappy. But instead, he faces his opponent, clearly feeling confident, and that confidence is punished. Oh, it's given a way back into this one. Nice work from Stown as well. The map 10's reigning supreme. They need Spinks to go big, and he does. A double spray down, looking for his third of the round. Not that many bullets left in the clip, though. Needs some help along the way, and unfortunately, he's just not getting any of it. He's having to do it on his own. His third kill, Vince. Leaves it in a 2v2, and somehow, he actually gets a chance to reload.
Yeah, Snappy providing Overwatch from heaven. c0ntact yet to get a kill. Still alive. Still plenty of time. Smoke's about to clear. c0ntact is trying to tap himself into a frag, but misses out, and Spinks with a fourth. The Israeli shines bright. And as fast as Heroic get themselves around, they are snuffed out again, and their economy pays the price.
They are really living off individuals right now, aren't they, on the c0ntact side? This is ridiculous from Spinks. And again, they're like, the one thing you can say about that sort of football manager analogy is sometimes picking up all the young talent that eventually become stars does actually work out every once in a while. The problem's always going to be consistency, and that is the main burden of this c0ntact roster. Spinks again, though. He's looking for an ace. It's going to be stolen away by Otto, but just slamming them into the ground. Again, he's off to a fantastic start. The thing is, though, this was the same factor in the last map. Like, he started amazingly well, probably the best player in the server initially, and then went very quiet towards the end. And I think that's always the case with c0ntact, is like, if there isn't a turning point, they can keep the momentum up. They can blast pretty much any team out of the water. If they have a bad round or two, sometimes it seems to slip away.
c0ntact has struck finally in round 8. Otto tries to get aggressive outside, gets punished. I won't get too dismayed for Heroic, because remember, they were 9-2 behind on the choice of c0ntact. Albeit under different circumstances, though. That was c0ntact on the T side, where they were playing this very chaotic style, random to a degree. On the CT side, they're doing well. Snappy with the AUG. It's always going to be a one and done if you get peeked from multiple players. Puts his team in a bit of an awkward spot now, as they've already lost one beforehand. Esperanto looking to try and flash himself in. I respect the hustle of the aggression, but c0ntact will be given a point-blank range headshot, even while flashed. Holds on, and Heroic will be getting a third. c0ntact have no interest. They want to save these two guns, and judging by the rest of the players' economy, they will be able to rummage together a buy. That is great news for Heroic as well, because it's not as if they had a bunch of money to fall back on if their plan A didn't work. So keeping all 5 players alive starts to build their economy nicely back into this half, and we're poised to have a very close half of Counter-Strike now, Tom.
Yeah, it's definitely seeming a bit hit and miss for c0ntact so far on this CT side. Like, either the aggression is something that we marvel at for how brilliant it is in like the individual plays, like with some of the pushes we've seen from Esperanto, with Spinks spraying down a couple, Rigon as well with the double headshot. And then other times we're looking at it and going, okay, well, that round slipped away because of the individual plays. Like, they lose a player outside very early on, just running outside. c0ntact waiting. And that's the one thing that you always have to give credit to Heroic for. Sometimes they get off to these poorer starts, but they are very, very good at adapting. And I think that's credit that needs to go over to c0ntact in general. Like, if things aren't working, they will change things up. And interestingly here, they've actually changed up their smoke pattern as well to allow them more control outside. They can push all the way through to the garage. They can go into secret if they desire. And because of this, well, at the moment, c0ntact are none the wiser of what's actually going on.
Esperanto, Spidey senses clearly tingling, throws down the smoke. And the T's decide to push through there. They push into Esperanto, and he gets 2 of them. Allow Spinks the opportunity, but Spinks also put down with authority. And now with Snappy being tagged up, he has to just hold the line. He has to stay alive. Tessis nearly got blown up by that grenade. And Rigon takes the opportunity, gets himself one. He assumed he'd already got the first pick. He went for the second, he got greedy, and he pays the price. And with Snappy down to 1 HP, and c0ntact able to slither away into safety, just as I say that, the grenade lands in his pocket, and now Stown has a 1-on-2. The bomb not planted for his vision, but he can quickly wide swing into it. Otto's up to the task, as are c0ntact. They get a 6th.
these rounds are just swinging back and forth at all times. Like the way it started, almost like a surprise for me in the way that Heroic played that round. I feel like you should almost switch the nameplates, like just running through a smoke into Esperanto. Wow, they didn't know he was on the other side, but it's never something you want to do. Then you had Spinks, who went down without a fight, wanted to try and be a hero just like his teammate had been, and loses the duel completely. And it looked all set for Heroic, but then, wow, a fantastic couple of nades set them up wonderfully. And they managed to take their sixth. It's very, very close. A bomb plant going down actually gives enough money, and again, we're going to see an early frag coming up for Stown. Rigon is gone. Now we have to see if they can recover.
Yorp as opposed to Cadian. And Nico onto Esperanto, the player that got them in a position to feasibly make that last round work. Stown with a second on 9 HP. Nico joins him on that same single-digit HP mark. Spinks, who's already had a 4K on the A site, still alive, but without any outside control or any backup. You can see that he's cognizant of that fact. He keeps checking over his shoulder, and Cadian will show his hand. Heroic, I feel like they'll be pretty disappointed with how this half has gone thus far. But putting a clear-cut, convincing, clean sweep round on the T half is definitely going to give them a little bit more confidence moving forward. And again, c0ntact's economy is never really fully stabilized. So it has caught up with them finally. And Heroic will feel like they have a good chance now to maybe even bring us back to somewhere around the realms of a 6-6 scoreline.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was even the case. Again, like we do seem to have just a position where c0ntact are super reliant on someone on their team just popping off in these rounds. We haven't seen like these sort of crazy crossfires necessarily come in like we'd like to see on a map like Nuke. However, they're not out of this map. I think that's been almost a positive spin. Like, you have to bear in mind, Heroic are currently the #2 team in the world. And as you mentioned, like, c0ntact are something like number 55. Like, this should be really dominant. And in both maps now, we've seen c0ntact got off to a strong start. We've seen the individuals on their team put up numbers and battle back. And it's taken almost Heroic each time to make some sort of adaptation to try and face off against them. Now, we do have a force here, Vince. And those deagles thus far have been pretty damn deadly.
Oh, they most certainly have been. Heroic should be treading lightly, even though c0ntact are having a struggle. You've seen these kind of assortment of weaponry work so many times. I mean, DreamHack Open November, it felt like every time we had the Eagles, they were getting success. Every time we saw Tech 9s and 5.7s in play. Always that hope that they bring it back. Wall of smokes outside. Heroic, a team that don't mind mixing up the pace, keeping the opposition on their tiptoes, waiting for potential pushes. Understandably, because c0ntact have been playing a lot of those kind of strats of going straight down the throat and getting aggressive against their opposition. But now it seems like Ramp is about to get aggressed on. Flashes will be proceeding the push. It is, by and large, though, a stack with Otto and Snappy here, and it's that Deagle that comes out for two. Snappy's going to go in for one of his own. The bomb's been dropped, and wouldn't you know it, just as we were talking about the Deagle prowess, it shines at the forefront. And Nico is last man standing. Heroic have got to start converting some of these opportunities because this was their golden ticket back into this half.
That seems to just be what c0ntact are so good at this point. They're so good at these sort of cheese rounds where they like just have a cheeky little setup that's a bit different from normal, and then their stars are just allowed to shine. I have to wonder, like, maybe with more time, we could genuinely see some true promise out of this roster. And this match so far, they've looked good. About to take themselves a further lead, picking up a lot of extra weaponry. The thing that's making me question it a little bit is you have to bear in mind, they had a boosted start of getting themselves the Deagle kills in round number 2. They then had a couple of like quick spray down rounds from Spinks and a few hero plays here and there. I do wonder on a day where some of those don't go their way if they'd be in such a good position. And I guess I'm still thinking about the last map, like to get an early lead, win 9 rounds in a row and let it slip with only 2 coming up. We know that there's another side to the coin, as there always has been.
Otto will be looking for a peek outside and gets it onto Cadian. Using that smoke to his advantage. Now Tessis from above rains down bullets, a barrage of them, besting Otto. And in doing so, they've given up a little bit of ground towards the ramp. They line up, and Rigor nearly had two. Look at the damage he's just inflicted. ADL will be taking a nice spike, and Esperanto says, thank you very much. I'll finish off what you started. c0ntact have lost Snappy. 2-on-2. I'm not sure what happened with the player cam there. He's having a chill. I've heard of lounging, but that's next level, mate. Baruch turns around, perforating Spinks, and now Esperanto on 19 HP. He's actually sat on the wall just to make it on super hard mode. Look at him. Absolute boss.
That's broken me. That's absolutely broken me. Why has he done that? There's nothing more Esperanto than intentionally putting your camera up the upside down. I guarantee that's on purpose, but, well, he's got a 1v2 situation. Both players going up the ladder. They almost look like they've switched positions here as he goes down, they go up. Gonna have this A-site plant for free. Not really a chance for him to win this round now. 19 HP. A retake going back up the ladder is nigh on impossible, and can we get his picture turned upside down as well, just so we have it consistent? Turned it round.
Well, the Lithuanian won't likely see any more bloodshed for the rest of this round. He seems content to just save. With that save, he can drop across to Snappy, and they can get another buy into effect. And you know, it's one of those strange things where you look at the overall scoreline and taking the score without any context, you say, well, 7-5 is not too bad, really. You know, c0ntact are having a pretty good showing right now. Be pretty happy with this overall. Yeah, but heroic CT side is just impenetrable at times. It's a real bastion, a real safeguarded side. So I feel like c0ntact, for me, Tom, I'm looking at least 9 rounds that may be required. Even with how this has been back and forth, and they've been dominant in part.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, I'm talking about those sort of cheese rounds being a thing that kind of bolsters them a little bit. Like, they have those players that can drag them through. And there's a part of me that wants to see this team work, and there's a part of me that's going to shut up because they're going to run straight into this A-site. It's Tessis. Bring on again! These Deegs are unbelievable. I don't know how they managed to do this so consistently. We've heard about sort of buggy weapons in the past. They're making the Deagle look as dodgy as hell, but luckily Stown is there to try and rectify things. Otto still has a rifle. He's going to take him to the bus. He gets a second through the box, and he's so close. Oh, I feel bad for the Finn. That was an unbelievable attempt at clutching out the round, and I don't know how they keep pulling off things like this, Vince. Like, what I was going to finish my point and say was, I kind of want to see this team stick together to see what they can do as a 5. But at the same time, there's so much individual talent. I do wonder that if they split apart and went into a few different rosters, if we could see with a bit more structure, with maybe some more supportive players, what these individuals can do.
There's no doubt in my mind that in terms of skill level, they are certainly good enough to challenge some of the top teams in the world, but it's more the strategy. It's more just having 5 excellent individual players doesn't make a good team. You know, you see this happen a lot. You could put the 5 best players skill-wise into a roster right now. Doesn't mean they're going to be successful. You need those glue kind of players. You need the IGL that's going to know the strengths and weaknesses of his teammates and utilize them properly. And I'm not sure yet that c0ntact have that. Not to say that they can't develop it. They absolutely could. Still early days. I'm not willing to write them off just yet. But they definitely have a way to go. That being said, though, in terms of this round, they have lost the opening pick. 2 players will be making moves through on secret, and Tessis knew what's coming. He still gets drilled by Esperanto Stiegel, who goes in for another. And as we talk about individual prowess and skill, Esperanto shows us again why. The bomb's been dropped, even though Heroic have the better weaponry. Positionally, this is incredibly rough. They don't have a smoke either. A molly and 2 flashes. They can throw 1 flash out, does connect. But Esperanto plays perfectly, pivots around the side, and allows Snappy to now show his hand, who drills Cadian at range. That's an unreal play from c0ntact.
these are the sort of rounds you get maybe one a map. Like, I'll give you one a map. They've had about 3 or 4 at this point. It makes absolutely no sense. I almost wonder if he's walking in like, you know, like a sort of gangster holds the gun sideways, because he's tilted sideways, so he's holding the gun in the same way. And somehow it just seems to work differently. This makes no sense. And then he gets wrecked straight in the next round. Cadian comes in. He's gone down straight afterwards. This is a manic game of Nuke. I don't think I've watched a game like Nuke like this ever in my life. Rigon in a good position. Stown now looking to work the Deagle. And Snappy's already rotated into position. A 3-on-3 situation. Weaponry actually being retrieved by the T side. So they've got a little bit extra, at least to what they started with.
Positionally pretty decent, but Otto seemed to have second thoughts. He got cold feet, started to back away. In doing so, he's given up quite a bit of ground. He's lost his life. Sphinx goes unchecked. He's missed the first few bullets, and so the wide swing from Tessis. Too powerful. Snappy now 1 and 2. We're coming in through heaven, but with no flashes to precede a potential push and no smoke, no incendiary to toss that into one of these choke points. Bombs planted way out in the open. This is... honestly, as far as 1v2 goes, this is looking very, very unlikely. Very difficult situation to be put in. And look who he's against, Tessis and Stown. 2 of the heavy hitters on Heroic. He goes out, no kit. Painting a pretty bleak picture, and that's why. Stown goes for the wide swing. That's all she wrote. c0ntact will lead, but by only 1 round. And now Heroic goes through onto the CT side. Find out if they can come back again after this break. Neck and neck between Heroic and c0ntact, but c0ntact again similar to Mirage, or not quite as one-sided. They did have a pretty decent lead, Tom, and they'll be ruining those missed opportunities. Some madness thrown in the mix. Let's be honest, Heroic could have easily been leading had it not have been for some sublime deagle work from the likes of Snappy, Esperanto, and the rest of the troops. But here we go. Heroic on their more comfortable side. Let's see if c0ntact can start with a bang.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any more straight arse rounds to come from c0ntact, because they have had some utterly ridiculous plays. Oh, okay, c0ntact. He's trying to have a few pistol kills of his own. Had a bit of a slow start to this match, but has definitely had a push back in. The nade, a little bit short. Looked like it was about to wreck the players on the other side, but even still, they're low and stuck. And more importantly, the rotation's starting to come in to hold them into a crossfire.
Players popping up on top of main, now dropping down with the rest of the troops. Nico, P250 to the dome, delivered by the Finn. Now c0ntact will be waiting for that push on Garage. No singed footsteps will be heard on the approach. Down, insta headshot. c0ntact now wraps around the side, and he has to drop onto Otto, who spins around into action and activates with the headshot before Burrup cleans up the rest. Heroic again, successful in the pistols.
We'll have to wait and see, though, Vince, because that's the one thing I've learned about c0ntact so far is, although they may not necessarily be good in the pistol rounds, they are pretty good at winning the forces. They've done well to invest into them, and they're going to do it again. It's a Galil for Otto. The rest will have Deegs alongside a Tech 9. And Nico's going to throw out a cheeky incendiary, which is mainly there to try and deny the smokes on the cross. Now, the smokes weren't even thrown. Esperanto tries to go for the fight anyway. So he's lost to what will be a fairly easy early fight. And in fact, it's continuing in the same vein. Nice shot from Rigon, though. However, Cadian's AUG has a slight advantage at that range. And now with 2 players standing, they need another miracle.
I don't know, Tom. I feel like they've had too many miracles. Like you know, they've rubbed that lamp too many times. Those wishes are coming to an end. Surely. Spinks and Snappy, though, could feasibly pull this off, but you feel like it would be Heroic overextending or making a mistake, as is so often the case with these kind of clutches. And now both perched into the squeaky side. And walking into the trap of Stown, and he does not give up those kills. Straight spray, money in the bank, and Heroic now take the lead. And c0ntact, after investing a little bit in that last round, can't really bounce back with too much other than Deagles.
Other than Deagles, he says.
True. That is a good point.
I'm pretty sure the last time they had a round like this, they got 4 kills. That was on Mirage. Was where Esperanto managed to sneak in behind and do a hell of a lot of damage. But we'll see. I'm not going to say that I believe that they're going to be able to do this one, but at the same time, I'm going to sit firmly on the fence, because at this point, I think we've been wrong enough times with what they're able to achieve with these Deagles. Nice start for Nico, though. Unarmored players, although I'm pretty sure Rigon actually had some Kevlar. He's invested quite a lot into this round, considering the next will not allow them too much utility. Nice shot from Nico as well. The perks of unarmored players is the USP is just as effective as any other gun. Esperanto got utility flying in his direction. Spinks will at least be able to kill off one and make things a little bit more costly. But as of yet, there's been no miracle headshots.
That does draw away c0ntact, who was playing main and could have joined Nico outside. Forces him to fully put his attention towards Squeaky. And now c0ntact can make the most of that momentary weakness outside. So they start to make a move round on main. There are ways and little gaps and possible ways forward into this round, but they always need those entries. They always need the likes of an Esperanto to come out with a brisk, frenzied headshot. And he's being tagged down significantly from Stown, who will dip in with one, and the rest falls into place. There are a couple of moments where I thought they were going to get exploited Heroic, but ultimately their weapons proved to be too hot to handle.
Yeah, good to see them sort of like get the conversion rounds this time, because that's the thing. If we're looking at this in terms of gun rounds and the starts that these teams have had, you'd kind of expect Heroic to actually be further in the lead here. It has been those ridiculous to unexplainable plays that come out of c0ntact that have sort of kept them in this match. Unfortunately, the other rounds really haven't been going too well. Going on to the T side, of course, this is where teams have definitely developed the ability to win T side rounds. The thing that worries me a little bit for c0ntact is this is a map where I feel like you need a lot more tactical depth, like good synergy, and also have those rotations on point for the decision making in the mid rounds. Now, I don't doubt Snappy in these sort of situations, but a lot of the time, especially on Mirage, c0ntact were very loose. Like, you had a few players taking initiatives, I guess you could say, and it's going to depend on how comfortable some of these players actually are with Nuke as a choice. Now, they have managed to gain ramp control for free. The CT side have opted to try and control other avenues based off what their purchase currently has in it, and that includes a FAMAS, an MP9, and a fair amount of utility still. Weirdly, though, for c0ntact, they're probably going to have an after-plant position without spotting a single man.
Yeah, they tossed a full wall of smokes outside, and Heroic bit down on that fake really hard. They expended a lot of utility, but they got a free rite of passage down to B. And as you said, all 10 players alive, a free plant, and now Heroic in effectively their bonus, albeit with 4 rifles, have got to try and retake. They've got plenty of kits, plenty of grenades to make this work, 2 mollies for c0ntact, but look at how much of the timer's already gone by. And I think Heroic save, you know. I think we have one of those strange situations where we may save the round with all 10 players coming out of it. Heroic completely bit down. They guessed wrong. They were outmaneuvered. Well played c0ntact. But the next round is going to be very much a case of deja vu.
Really weird. Rounds like that make me feel uncomfortable. Like it's sort of like if you didn't shower for a couple of days and your skin gets a bit itchy. You're just like, there can't be rounds without kills in Counter-Strike. It just feels wrong. For the CT side, as you said, though, it's a boost to their economy. They don't lose any of their weaponry. They can buy back up with utility, and they still have enough to buy into the next round as well. For the Ts, though, it's just a free injection of cash and an extra round on the board. This time, though, Ramp's not going to be given up for free, and TeSeS is almost renowned at this point for his fights towards this position, his deep smoke, giving him an avenue to try and be a little bit more aggressive. However, we'll see if he crumbles under the pressure, as it looks like they're going to try and walk through this spot again.
Having to walk through flames and fire, gets extinguished, and Arcadian comes up, but Spinks with 2 headshots. Lots of damage has been done to the oncoming Ts, but the kills all the way of c0ntact. And Esperanto goes in for another Heroic. They've been in trouble these last 2 rounds. I mean, fair enough. You can just write off the last one because they guessed wrong. They gamble stacked outside. Didn't work out for them. But they had chances here. They had opportunities. And they came out second best in every single turn, every single trade. Nico gets 1, but it feels like a consolation kill. Nothing too significant. But I suppose this is where that previous save, Tom, with keeping all 5 players alive, as you touched on, was a boost to the economy of Heroic. And they can get another buy. Even if they were to lose the lives of Nico and Stown, still a buy comes in. They can still get at least 1 up. And they may even be able to take an AK out. That's a nice little cherry on top.
Yeah, that's a decent upgrade for Nico, more importantly. He only had an MP9 still. Rigon, he's going to die here, isn't he? I understand wanting to take these weapons away, and actually that kill from Esperanto does make it somewhat worthwhile, make things a little bit more costly, but again, this is what I talk about when I say the sort of synergy between these players. Like, you know roughly where they're going to be. If they peek that at the same time, you may even get both players, and the likelihood is Rigon doesn't die. Instead, they go a little bit more disjointed and lose some of their own money. It's a small detail, but it's something worth noting.
Same kind of take as the previous round. TeSeS being applied direct pressure from c0ntact, stacking multiple players over here, but keeping their options open. Otto making sure they don't get peeked or flanked round the back. I like that c0ntact have that read. If we keep going ramp, it's only a matter of time before Heroic try a quick lobby take. So get a step ahead of it. Force them to respect you. They have a position down on Secret, though. Because of all of this ramp engagement that we've seen, they've been very slow to get outside. This may play into Heroic's favor.
slightly late to take. Does give quite a bit of space again for them to play with. A push coming in from Nico, though, could be everything. He's trying to use the smokes to his advantage. He does manage to get rid of Rigon, but do they expect that to be the only player? That's the question. Because if they forget about Esperanto, this could be a massive problem. However, Barup, he gets the timing spot on. He'll drop him as he peeks and leaves 3 players standing. They don't have anywhere to go at this point. They need an entry. And it is all falling apart. Otto can't get anything done. We might even just see the T's save now. It's becoming a weird game, Vince, with a lot of players just holding onto their weaponry rather than fighting again. Not necessarily the wrong decision, but I do wonder if maybe c0ntact need to go back to just fighting with conviction, like pushing together, getting those trades, getting into afterplant positions, rather than these slower rounds relying more so on the picks.
Yeah, I love that word conviction, because honestly, that's what we've seen time and time again. When c0ntact have been aggressive, when they've been forthright and follow through with their decision making, they've actually been very successful. This is what saw them take that 9-2 lead on Mirage. This is what saw them really put Heroic under a lot of pressure and a lot of issues. And now on Nuke, they're slowing it down. And in doing so, I think they're just playing in the favor of Heroic. Like, this is a team on Nuke that feel very comfortable. They won't be feeling too sweaty about this. They won't be feeling too off-kilter. So c0ntact, you need to make a decision and stick with it and try and brute force your way. When it comes to straight-up dueling, you're on an even keel with Heroic. We've seen it so many times today. Like, they can get it done. But there's good counter utility tossed in from Heroic as well. Tess is caught in an awkward position, throws down the Molotov, allows him safe passage downstairs, and all he has to do now is survive. Stall as long as possible, allow k0ntact to come in, but k0ntact's missed a pretty straightforward shot and gets punished. He at least gets one on his way out. Tess is now at a different angle, getting 2, staying alive, and now the rest of the troops can come in. Tess is spraying down 3 in total. Rigon is low, a third of his HP remains. Plenty of time, and does have control over the bomb, so he can try the wide swing. But even if he contends with Tessis, who's in fine form for this round, there's 2 more players to find, and Nico shuts him out. 12-10.
That did not look like a happy bunny. Like, Rigon's clearly getting a little bit frustrated. I do, although this is still a very good round for Heroic, I still want to give credit to Spinks over the last few. Like, his entry fragging has been really impressive in positions where they're not easy shots to hit. Someone that, again, we've sort of seen almost rise from this roster. Didn't know massive amounts about him other than like FPL matches we'd seen before. It seems like a solid player. Unfortunately, it's not really been enough. Tessus with a big round. I like as well his ability to jump backwards through the air and throw a Molotov that perfectly blocks off the players from killing him. Like, that is a lot easier said than done, and it's not particularly easy to say. Nonetheless, a tactical timeout taken for c0ntact, a moment to try and come up with a plan. Esperanto on a Deagle. I honestly think that might be a better choice than the rifle at this point. He's been so good with it that it really isn't that much of a detriment. However, for Heroic, money has now started to build. They've really started to build momentum into this series as well. And more importantly, this is exactly the sort of turnaround we saw in the last map, where they ended up closing it out fairly convincingly.
Indeed. We have been here before. c0ntact fare better. This is the aggression that we were talking about, that conviction, the follow through with the goal. It's not quite worked out for them. They get stumped by k0ntact and Borup. Spinks is low, finished off from the high ordnance of the HE, and Nico cleans up with the AK-47, and that for me is a very worrying sign. A tactical timeout was called. They went for the aggressive play we were talking about, and Heroic dealt with that too.
Yeah, I think also the reaction they've had on the ramp as well. We've started to see Tessus now like get a couple of rounds where he's not necessarily just battling for it so much. That was one of the avenues that c0ntact were having a lot of success. And with outside as well, we're seeing players actually challenge that avenue a little bit more. This round at least, pistols once again, Vince, and they're going to try and brute force A.
All out rush. Love to see this, but it's more of the same from Heroic. They're feeling pretty good right now. It's a erratic spray, honestly, but k0ntact with his Deeg. puts that sidearm to use. c0ntact, though, effectively throwing it down the blender as a result of it being the pistols. Now they have AKs, but Tom, we've reached that point in the best of 3. This is their last hope. If they concede this, no money will be present, and Heroic with the very real possibility of a 16-10. c0ntact fighting for their best of 3 lives.
Haven't looked particularly convincing on this half of the map. A couple of rounds, one where we saw Heroic almost completely save, the other, hey, they got some pretty decent entries, but that's not the start they were looking for. Esperanto already down and out. His outside aggression has not been too successful, and Snappy will meet the same fate. It's looking like they're just getting slaughtered at this point. Every single player falling in a matter of seconds, spammed through the smoke, and Heroic, they're having an absolute field day. The number 2 in the world looking to take their opening series in a 2-0 fashion. It might not be as clean as the scoreline seems, but I don't think they're going to care.
No, get that first game out the way, get that W on the board, that's all that matters. They can worry about the finer details later on. c0ntact. I said after the first half that 8-7, it did concern me, because we know how good Heroic CT side can be. It feels like they maybe let a couple of chances go by, and Stown with 3 spraying through the smoke, headshot and then chest shots to finish it off. Bomb's been dropped down. Tom, it's all over. Heroic have got this in the bag.
Yeah, c0ntact trying to do the same thing again. Like, I don't really see any level of sort of tactical depth when it comes to this team, and you can't have that going into a match versus Heroic. It is going to be the 2-0, somewhat as expected, but c0ntact at least gave me a little bit of hope for some of their matches coming a little bit later on, because at least on an individual level, they looked decent. They put up a fight. They did some damage. At the same time, Vince, though, they did still end up getting fairly battered towards the end.
Yeah, and it was kind of a similar sequence to what we saw in the first map. Great first half, let a few rounds slip unnecessarily, did better in pistols than they did in rifle rounds, which was very odd. And then in the second half, they completely collapsed, Tom. Like, where were c0ntact on that T half? It's like they just disappeared.
Well, either way, I believe we are going to be going off to a short break, but once we come back, we're going to be breaking this one down and maybe have a few cheeky interviews in there with the teams that have just been played. So we'll see you in just a moment. Hello and welcome back to DreamHack Masters Winter. Heroic, they've done sort of what we expected of them, Vince. They've taken this in a 2-0 fashion, but at the same time, there were definitely some moments for c0ntact that gave me some hope going into some of the latter matches for them.
No, sure. I mean, look, you're running into the second best team in the world. If you take into the account HLTV rankings, you're playing them on their best map, one of the best teams in the world on Nuke. And you didn't get completely blown out in either map. And honestly, I kind of touched on this before. They're almost their own worst enemies to a degree there, if I'm being honest, c0ntact. They could have feasibly won Mirage and even taken it to like overtime on Nuke. They held themselves in pretty good regard there. And I think there's a lot to be positive about. There are negatives. There are some moments where they threw away rounds as well. Like we've already touched on that multiple times. But overall, I think they give a pretty good account of themselves, Tom. Like I'd be pretty happy if I was c0ntact.
Yeah, I think every once in a while as well, we saw maybe a moment or two of frustration, which I think has always been an issue dating back with this team. Like they have had players that, as we sort of mentioned before, can be fairly emotional. Whereas when I look at the side of Heroic, they're almost cutthroat in those moments. Like the amount of times now, like I think back to DreamHack Fall, where we were looking at the RMR points that Heroic ended up basically coming all the way through. We were looking at that event and going, oh, look, they're like 8-1 down, or they're like 6-1 down, 9-1 down. It happened quite a lot of times, and a lot of the time that was on the other stream that we weren't necessarily casting. And then we joined back into it a little bit later on. And it's like, oh, they've won 16-12, and you're like, what? But how did they manage to do that? And it's just the resilience that they seem to have. I think a lot of that comes from Cadian. Again, like this is me looking from the outside, but the man literally brings like a massive foghorn to the game just so that he can try and pump his players up when it's needed. Like he's definitely having a bit of fun along the way. So I think that he's definitely a big part of that, especially with some of the younger players, but also people like Nico. Like I remember hearing on the Blast Desk, Pimp sort of talking about him being almost like the humorous one within the squad. I've definitely witnessed a few of those moments. The man, he's not great at karaoke. I'll put that out there right now. He may not even remember it, but I will never forget. I think it was at Star Ladder in China, that man singing. And yeah, I think I've still got the ringing in my ears. But those are the sort of players you need in those moments, because I know for myself, and I definitely know for yourself at times as well, is you can get tilted, and that is not good for your teammates.
No, exactly. And, you know, we talked on that emotional side of Contact before, and there's no doubting that this is a team of very skilled individual players. And I would love to see, in a little bit more time, these guys see how they gel together. I think Heroic overall, you got Cadian, right? And I believe we actually will have Cadian in the interview very shortly. This is a guy that's just been around for so long, and he's just done so much. And I think I hear a ringing. I think that means that we've got our interview coming in.
Oh yeah, hello, Cadian. Are you here? Can we hear you? How you doing?
Yeah, that's not Cadian.
Oh, it's Stown. We've been lied to the whole time. Well, nonetheless, how you doing, Stown? Are you feeling all right after that game? You know, it was maybe a little bit closer than you would have liked. A few pistol losses here and there. Are you still feeling confident with how you performed?
Yeah, I have a good feeling after this game. We had a really bad start on Mirage, but we managed to keep our cool and have a good comeback. So I'm satisfied with our performance today.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it there, Stown. I was interested on your thoughts and generally the sort of the team's thoughts that you went 2-0 on Mirage, you won the pistol, you got the subsequent round. Your pistols today were actually really good, you won most of them, but then you lost 9 rounds in a row. What happened? What was going on there? Because we were both pretty confused.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. I'm not really sure what happened. To be honest, they played some good CS as well, but I think we were just a little bit off. We needed to get started. We lost some rounds where we were 5v4, 5v3 as well, some stupid rounds, and we just knew we could come back. So we got the double up going when we were behind 9-2, and then we got the last 4 rounds, which I would say is okay for a CT Mirage. Not optimal, of course, but 6 rounds is doable, and we know our T side can be really good. We showed that against Mouthbots as well, so we just grinded it back.
So something I'm curious about, we hear a lot of interviews when other teams are sort of asked about you guys, and they'll say oh, this team looks beatable. We think we've got a good game plan. They talk about Heroic as if you haven't been one of the teams that recently reached #1 in the world. And I'd sort of question from your point of view, why do you think teams still seem to have this level of doubt over you in comparison to teams like Astralis? Is it just because of the LAN period, because we've been online, or do you think that it's just as you as individuals?
I definitely think it has a lot to do with the fact that this period has been online, to be honest. I think that's the top 1 reason. And yeah, also some of our players, we haven't performed that good at LANs before. Of course, we have been to big LAN events, but we never really got through to the semifinals, quarterfinals, and these big events on LAN. So I definitely think that's the reason to it, for sure.
So to ask you one more question, it's a little bit more of a boring one, probably one you've heard a million times before, but say you're looking further into this tournament, is there a team that you particularly want to beat? Are you looking at Astralis and going, yeah, we want to take them down again? Or is it just, we want to beat everybody, we want to win, that's it for me?
Sure. We definitely wanna face Astralis again. It's always a good match against them. It would be nice to beat them again, so I would definitely look forward to that matchup for sure.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Stan. It's been a pleasure, and again, congratulations on your win.
Thank you very much.
So there you have it.
Well, there you go.
They seemed as confused as us about the start of that Mirage. I'd be also curious to pick the brains of Contact as well about that from their perspective, to know roughly what happened on their side and sort of how it impacted them going through into that second half, because we already touched on this, that both maps, they had a good first half. The second half, they kind of collapsed. And I'm kind of curious what kind of mentality you have going through, knowing you had a 9-2 lead, and then suddenly on that second half, you just find yourself getting absolutely battered on your CT side.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one where I'm starting to question it myself. I think for c0ntact coming forward into the tournament, obviously, it doesn't really get a whole lot easier going into the lower bracket. Like, we know that, well, we're going to be showing that in just a moment, that will sort of bring things up about whether or not we have, like, them facing off against the likes of FaZe or Spirit, who are both teams at the moment that are looking relatively strong. You can actually see at the moment the Spirit are actually leading in that series, although I think last time I saw they were a little bit further down when it came to Mirage. But at the same time, like, no matter who you're up against, you got Spirit, who definitely didn't have the performance they necessarily wanted, Vince, at the Open, but if anything, that might mean they come back with a vengeance. And actually a FaZe side that almost look, again, a little bit better since we've seen Nico leave and given maybe some of the other stars a bit of an opportunity here.
Looking better, perhaps, but 1-0 down to Spirit, who we saw oversee over the DreamHack Open November. Pretty disappointing finals performance, I think it's safe to say. Take nothing away from Gambit. But I suppose it goes to show again, you know, we discussed this before we went live, that there's a lot of very close games, right? Like a lot of games that are hard to predict.
Well, I think we sort of mentioned it when we were looking at the groups a little bit earlier on, that Group B looks pretty stacked in terms of, like, we've got the two teams that have come over from North America and sort of like look to do some damage there. And then when it comes to this group, there's definitely some openings, especially when you look at what is potentially going to be that first upper bracket match that you're going to have Heroic facing off against either FaZe or Spirit. Like, that's a good opportunity for one of those two teams. I think Heroic might have a slightly easier route than what we could expect, considering how heavy this sort of tournament looks like. And again, if they don't make it out of this group, Heroic, that's going to be the sort of marker where teams go almost like, yeah, we told you so. Because we saw interviews from the likes of Carrigan, and although Carrigan is definitely one of those players who's always been like sort of a mastermind in Counter-Strike, good at picking teams apart, and I want to point out he was right, because they did go and beat Heroic. So it's not like he was just making false claims. But he said that they're a team that they don't look immortal. They don't look unbeatable. They're a team that we're almost like happy to play against in maybe comparison to some of the others. Like, you look, for example, at the likes of a Vitality, and they have that sort of X factor. They have a player that can just completely take over the server on his own, as we witnessed at Fall. So it is one of those things where it's like, I do understand sometimes the questions people ask of Heroic, because in terms of individual skill, like, I wouldn't say necessarily they have a top 5 player in the world, but just the way that they seem to set up and play together, if they can continuously get to the finals of tournaments and constantly win them, then, well, you can't really doubt them anymore.
No, not at all. I think you have to look at the fact that I think they themselves would agree that they don't necessarily have like the best players individually in the world, but at the end of the day, their teamwork is so stellar that it kind of bypasses a lot of that. And, you know, teamwork at the end of the day is maybe the most important metric of all.
Well, either way, that is our first best of 3 done. And because of the fashion that it was completed, we are going to have a slightly longer break, Vince. So it gives you a time to maybe get a little bit of lunch, have a snack, get a drink, and or you can go check out the main stream, which is still going to be going on. So go do that. We'll be back a little bit later on, as we'll be taking a look at Astralis, who are going to have their first matchup facing off against c0ntact.